Hello everybody and welcome to another edition of The Magic Show. This week we're going to take a look at what's new, what's hot, and the lessons you could learn from players better than yourself. Along the way we'll take a look at the absurdity of in-jokes and the wackiness that is vintage YIXLID. So this Monday, Stephen Menendian dropped the vintage metagame bomb with the new, fully rebuilt and newly customized manaless YIXLID. This is the balls-to-the-wall aggro deck that haunts wizards' dreams at night. The horrors of a first, second, or third turn kill possible in virtually every single match. When you read statements like, quote, "This deck is utterly broken," from a man like Stephen, you know he's not kidding around. And at the beginning of the next paragraph, he begins again, quote, "Here's the thing, this deck is really, really broken." Now, for something to be, quote, broken in a format, it has to be really, really good. Now, for something to be broken in vintage, it's like saying the sky is purple. Rarely does it happen, and when it does, you're probably hallucinating. But the forum replies are backing it up. Personal testing is so off the charts it's not even funny, and suddenly every vintage player is finding their Ley Lines of the Void for the main deck and thinking about putting Tormod's Crypt main because of the horror. And who is coming to the rescue, even in the broken vintage format? Why, it's YIXLID Jailer picking up the slack. But the point is this: Bridge from Below was a card that Stephen specifically pointed out as one of those cards that people want as a 2 of or 3 of. But if it's good enough for 2 or 3 slots, why not 4? Quote, "I have seen arguments for 3 bridges, but that doesn't make sense to me. The advocate suggested that the 4th bridge is unnecessary because it produces, quote, too many men. To me, you can't have too many men. You can always use those extra men to get damage in or feed your flashback spells. Bridge is most powerful in multiples." And you know what? He's right as rain. This is, of course, a raw, delicious list that is best dipped in wasabi and eaten at pompous places. It's been played a few times, and of course, things are changing. But what I do know is this: A, Narcomoeba is free. I don't know if you noticed that, but just in case, free. Like, put a 1/1 blue flyer into play just for playing your deck, free. It's weird. Llanowar Mentor is also being dissed because you'll miss your land drops. However, by the same token, you'll get your turn 3 Dread Return flashback on, along with the mana to actually cast that Golgari Grave Troll you have in your hand. Also on turn 3, did I mention turn 3 is usually a big turn for this deck? You know, Street Wraith is also free, but a different kind of free. It actually fuels the deck better than any other card currently in it. But the star of this deck is Bridge from Below. Make no mistake, this is a huge, huge card, an impacting card, an impressive card, a card that will change your metagame no matter what format you play. You remember what my friend Joe said a few weeks ago about liking cards that punish players for playing mass removal? Well, there's nothing better than Bridge. Even if they get rid of Bridge from Below with the Wrath of God, they'll still be staring down 2/2 zombie tokens as a result. Got 2 Bridge from Below in the graveyard? Sweet mother, it only gets more and more dangerous to play that mass removal spell. Ladies and gentlemen, this has to be the undiscovered star of the set. It's so damn good it caught the eye of Menendian. Now, granted, it works in the confines of a deck with 4 Bazaar of Baghdad, but when a set gives 3 cards, full sets of them, no less, to a new Tier 1 vintage deck, you should take a damn hard look at those 3 cards. And they're all awesome, and they're all going to put Dredge on the scene for a long time. And my God, what can you do with Bridge and Extended? Don't think we've seen the last of this card by any means. In today's title segment, we take a look at some of the deck tech footage from Pro Tour Yokohama. If you didn't know or notice, in Brian David Marshall's article last week, my work on the Pro Tour Yokohama finals was featured. This isn't to toot my own horn much, but nevertheless, if you haven't watched them, do so. And if you like them, tell Wizards. Comment on BDM's article or the YouTube videos. If you want to keep this type of content coming, even if I don't get to edit the next batch, you need to let Watsy know. Tell him Mr. Orange sent you. So first up is an important highlight from the Heezy himself, Mark Herberholz. In this video, listen at how he describes beating a red-green Stormbind deck with his undefeated at the time blue-black-white Teferi control.
I think a really good example of the power of this deck was, I was watching your match this last round on table 1 against Dane Young, and he seemed to have a great position. He got a Stormbind in under one of your counter spells, you had to counter something else, and he landed a Stormbind, and he's just sitting there, and you're dead in a couple of turns, but you seem pretty calm. I'm like, obviously Mark's got something going on. Can you describe how you won that game?
Yeah, he got an early Stormbind in, and he like, I'm assuming he thought he was sneaking it through or whatever, because I countered an acid loss or something, and he got Stormbind in, but I disenchanted my hand. So I just sat back, let him pitch all of his cards and started shocking me. Got down to about 5 life. He had like 1 card left in his hand, disenchanted the Stormbind, sat back on all my removal and counter spells in my hand.
You hear that? That's Billy Moreno's words from a few weeks ago coming true all over again. He took damage until the point where he stopped taking damage, that is by disenchanting the Stormbind, and then he had enough spells, creatures, mana, and the wonderfully vague term of, quote, advantage to keep the other player from winning. So when you Stormbind players out there think you've got it figured out by throwing down an early bind and killing them from the random discard, think twice next time, alright? Speaking of Stormbind, take a look at the current frontrunner in the Rookie of the Year race, Sebastian Taylor's red-green list, and a curious thing that's missing.
Sebastian, I'm a little confused. I'm looking through the cards, and I can't find your Stormbinds. Where are they?
I think the Stormbind is not really good. You want to play every land you draw.
Okay.
So you don't want to discard. So you disintegrate is always better, and you must cast the Bogadan, cost 8 mana.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does seem like every other red-green deck is playing Stormbinds. That's in fact one of the reasons you're supposed to want to play red-green, but they don't have this top end. I mean, here's 10 cards that are just gigantic mana hogs.
Against mono greens, this deck is good, I think. You have 3 Spectral Force. Say when he play 2.
Yeah.
And you have 4 haircuts. Yeah. The Stormbind, it's not really good, I think.
Yep, the man has no use for a Stormbind in his red-green deck. He'd rather play fatties or destroy your lands. But with 24 lands and about 1,000 mana sources, the deck was almost nothing but mana. He also had the incredible blue-crushing idea of putting 4 of the Chronic in the sideboard, along with a single island that would never be in danger of destruction. In fact, despite his X4 record at the time of this interview, Thaler won out and made top 8, and that's what I call playing good Magic. Up next is Raphael Levy and his Red Deck Wins goodness. The most important highlight of this deck tech video was about our old pal Browbeat.
Because all the burn spells deal 3 or 5. Because Browbeat is basically deal 5 damage.
Yeah, basically, yeah, absolutely.
Because you don't really want, he doesn't really want you to draw 3 cards.
Is this the most successful finish for the Punisher mechanic so far? The most successful start to a tournament? Like, people have always talked about the Punisher mechanic being a little...
Awful? Horrible? Stupid? Oh yes, we've been there. I've been there. And hell, Mark Young wrote a whole article on why it sucked and why people who played it were just not, quote, looking at the numbers. He even named the article Browbeaten. Yeah, I'd say. Anyway, let's continue.
I actually remember when the bonus sheet was coming together, Aaron Forsyth was saying, Browbeat's good. It's, he felt like that was a card that was really interesting that maybe didn't get its full time in the sun last time. So that was a Forsyth special to put that on the bonus sheet.
Certainly watching people play that against the blue-black control decks.
Yeah.
It's been really interesting where they either way, you're very happy.
Yes.
With whatever the result is, you're happy doing 5 damage to them. You're happy if they let you draw some cards, right?
So you're happy either way. So.
Has anyone let you draw cards with it yet?
Yes. Deals 5 damage. Deal 3 cards. Everything happened so far. So.
You know, when I got back into Magic from my extended Magic break that everyone seems to take at least once or twice in their lives, I was looking through the old sets, and one of the cards I thought was really great was Browbeat. But then I read the feedback, and I heard my friends bashing it, quote, it never gives you what you want, they told me. And it's something I've said myself on this show. But sometimes both options are what you want. So what does this do? Negate entire arguments? Prove a world of, quote, bad players right? Or does it change nothing because, as the pundits like to say, quote, at this Pro Tour, in this moment, the deck was good. Now see also This Girl. Now this girl was a brilliant deck who just so happened to be awful. It's that silver bullet that kills the werewolf moments before it rusts and then backfires through your eye socket. This Girl and Browbeat were awesome in their respective arenas. But now that one's definitely extinct, can Browbeat soon become a tier 1 card? Is Dash Hopes headed for the winner's circle? Can Nessian Courser possibly sound any more like a foreign car? Lastly, we have Will Lawry. He's at his first Pro Tour and expectantly excited. Let's hear what he had to say about his sliver deck.
Now, would you recommend this deck for the PTQ?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's got so much power that like sometimes I made mistakes in my last round and it just overpowered anyway. Like, I let a Sedge Sliver die.
The power, man, the power, the raw power. It is too great. The power of this deck to overpower the overpowering overpoweredness of... This guy had 21 points when this video was taken. He finished the next day with 24. Maybe it's not such a good PTQ deck idea right now. Our last piece of video is from the finals of Pro Tour Yokohama. Did I mention I edited them? That means I spent a lot of time watching these 4 games, and of all the games, there is a lesson most clearly seen and narrated in Game 2. It involves Kazuya Mitamura playing creatures as though he couldn't remember what response he got from Waifo Tappa in Game 1. Let's watch.
Here's Shadow Mage Infiltrator. Interesting. Mitamura goes for a morph there. Why would you open up a 2-for-1 with Damnation?
I mean, and Wafatop has demonstrated a willingness to trade 1-for-1 on the...
Yeah, I don't like that play. There's the Damnation, and Mitamura gets himself 2-for-1 when either one of those individually, I think, would have been threatening enough to potentially bait that Damnation out.
He's discarded 2 shapeshifters now.
Bizarre. Here's another morph, and here's another Finkel. There is no second Damnation.
Yes, there is.
Oh, there is. Wow. Brine Elemental and Shapeshifter down. Mitamura has just walked into a pair of Damnations from Gion Wafatapa. I mean, he's not out of gas, but I feel like he could have played this game slower. Like, what's the hurry?
Randy Buehler is spot on here. In Game 1, whenever he played something, Waifo Tappa bent over backwards to kill it. There are only so many threats in Mitamura's deck, and giving Waifo Tappa an advantage like that was silly. Particularly after getting 2-for-1 the first time, he went for round 2. I understand the post-wrath compulsion. It lives in us all. We're sure that when our opponent wraths, it's the only wrath in their hand. Not true. And again, Waifo Tappa was trading Damnations 1-for-1 in Game 1. Pay attention to how much removal your opponent has, but also how they use that removal in previous games to best judge how many risks to take. Lastly, I'll run through a few stories circulating the Magic realm as of late. Firstly, there was the Love Fest article duo from Patrick Chapin and Mike Flores, which was to say that 2 articles were so filled with in-jokes and bravado for each other's abilities that egos were blowing up, and the readers were falling asleep. Meanwhile, Kyle Sanchez wrote something interesting. Yeah. Next we have our own Craig Stevenson with a fun little gag that's great for about 5 minutes. You know the kind. The gag is this. You know the feeling when a kid asks for some horrible rares for trade? Craig does this and follows it with a ah, and it fills him with such glee that he does it over and over again. Now naturally he was called obnoxious, but I for one find it funny. It's too bad you can't really get the effect online. Typing AAAAH versus ah to some starry-eyed trader just isn't the same. Grand Prix Columbus is looming, and I'm doing my best to attend. You guys hear that? The Magic Show on location at the Grand Prix. Will I be grabbing interviews? You bet your ass. With the once-a-year legacy goodness in full swing, I'm hoping to run into all kinds of Magic personalities. So if you plan on going, be sure to pipe up in the feedback or the forums. The Magic Show needs a posse, yo. My buddy Chris Romeo came all the way from right field to give me one of my favorite set reviews ever. Each card is a 10 or each card is a 1. Brilliant. Remember, future set reviewers, the fun in reading them is, honestly, disagreeing with them. It's fun to agree, but not as fun as it is to try to stick up for your favorite spell or creature. Remember when we used to get weekly rants on how bad green was? Give us some dissent, people. Which has got me thinking, where are our villains? I'm afraid we've scared them off. I'm afraid that we're so set on being, quote, civil, that we can't let loudmouths back in. Take Geordie Tate. There's something about a guy who can invoke such emotion. A lot of times it's uncomfortable and it's painful and it's true and sometimes it's fantasy, but no one catches my eye like Tate or Talon Lee in his prime. Because people like to disagree. People derive pleasure from correcting or identifying with other people. So this cycle repeats itself, and I want to hear from my detractors just as much as my fans. Now, I love all you guys, and even when Talon Lee was bashing me for being unoriginal or not listening or not doing anything new or what I could do with the format, it was still fascinating, and I miss those villains. We need villains because of their contrast, because there is a fine line between villain and troll. The best villains, as we know, are misled, but still brilliant. Riddle me this. When Talon Lee was at his talentest, Mark Rosewater himself personally asked him to write an article on planar chaos. Why? because Talon got people talking, and because his opinions were so brash that it got everyone in on the conversation. Do we see such a set review or reaction for Future Sight? And it kind of makes me sad. Well, I guess the answer to life, the universe, and everything isn't how many magic shows it takes to become rich. Damn it. So until next time, heroes and villains, this is Evan Irwin, tapping the cards so you don't have to.
Now, would you recommend this deck for the PTQ?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's got so much power that like sometimes I made mistakes in my last round and it just overpowered anyway. Like, I let a Sedge Sliver die.